Hello, and welcome to another episode of Intune Drot Training. Yep, that's it.
I believe it's Intune Training there, Adam.
That's the one. The Steve and Adam Show, the place to learn how to use Microsoft Intune.
Steve.
I've clearly screwed this up after 5 years. You'd think I know what I was saying. Hey, Steve.
Hey, Adam. How we going?
Man, it's been a bit. It's been crazy.
Been a minute.
Yeah. Trying to get these videos out, but
in the intervening period.
I know. It's nuts.
Gotta say, life's getting in the way.
It is.
Do very much want to keep getting these videos out, though, but we'll get there.
Yeah, we're trying.
Sorry, viewers.
So, you may have already seen this by now, but we did post a recent survey on our the community tab of our this channel of the YouTube channel. We've got a survey asking kind of, hey, what do you want to see next and everything. And for context, this video is happening in March of 2024. If you if you watch this in the next 2 months, sure, go leave us some feedback there. If anytime later, we probably aren't going to check back. So it's anyway, I'm just choosing to bake it into this video because this is going to come out around the time we're looking for that feedback. So we're just basically asking, hey, what do you want to see next? Leave us your chat and your comments, or even on this video, we're reading the comments, we're responding. So, and if you subscribe, you'll get other, feed in your feed anytime we post things. So, do that too. Like and subscribe, ring that bell. Whoa. Anyway,
we swear this is not what the podcast is all about.
No, it's not.
If this is the first time you've watched us, we will get better.
So Steve really thought we should continue down this journey of starting with the security focus on everything. But we've had several requests for things around settings catalog and policies and stuff. Yep. And so that seems to be kind of a focus for a lot of folks right now. So instead of doing a BitLocker video this round, we're going to do an intro to kind of all things policy related available across the different platforms. So there's going to be a fair amount of Windows centric stuff in here, but we're going to try to cover what's available across the other platforms in each of the nodes as we go through them. So this will still be a combined experience. We are not going to do any demos of the, any demo we do is just going to be, here's a quick view of how you would set a policy in this node. We're not going to actually configure any specific policies that we then push down to workstations. We're just trying to give you the general concepts of how the settings catalog, the templates work, CSPs, looking at, hopefully if we have time, we get into group policy analytics, some things around that stuff. So so that's going to be the focus of this video.
We'll also talk around the Apple Declarative device management model and everything associated on that, as well as all of the stuff in the not so Windows centric space that is the Intune world.
Yeah, so something like that. So we're making a lot of promises right now. We're going to see how far we get. Steve's got a hard cutoff in less than an hour, so we'll see what we can cram into this one, and we'll come back for more. Certainly at the end of this, leave us some comments and let us know kind of what gaps you'd like us to fill in the next videos, but we're going to try to do the policy stuff justice as we go. So with all that said, let's hop in. So we're going to go to intune.microsoft.com, and we're going to jump into the devices node because that's going to be the main location where everything is going to be. However, this is not the only place that you can configure policies. In fact, you can configure them on the devices node and all the subsequent, or most of the subsequent things here. In the apps node, you can do them. There are app protection and configuration policies we'll visit someday. Endpoint security has a subnode of things. So you've got lots of places you can do things. So, but ultimately they are all policies, configurations, settings, whatever you want to call them, group policy equivalent, CSP equivalent things designed to help you efficiently apply settings down to your managed devices.
Exactly.
So there you go. So you could drill and filter by platform if that's not obvious yet. Like if you filter here, then when we go and drill into configuration profiles, which is where we're going to spend a lot of our time, and we go to create a policy, then everything is Windows. It's already pre-filtered here.
So Adam, I'm going to correct your terminology there. These aren't configuration policies; they're configuration profiles.
Thank you. It's got the P. I'm combining these two.
I'm doing the same, but yeah, these are profiles, and why they're profiles, not policies, is because we're sitting there and mapping it out and going, "This is what we want it to look like." Yes, it enforces it, executes it, but it's a profile.
Thanks for that clarification.
Sorry, Adam, I broke your flow.
No, it's fine. It's fair, Steve. It's fine. Good. Yeah. I don't know where I was headed now, but so anyway, you can drill in and pre-filter, so it makes one less step on doing your configuration. But for what we're going to do, we're going to drill into configuration, which is going to be where a majority of your configuration profiles are going to occur. Here's the fun bit, Steve. Tell me why it says policy name here.
I know.
So new policy.
New policy. It's
so
fantastic, isn't it?
But then I'm going to use a profile type. So yeah. So you decide.
So we're going to go alphabetical, or are we going to go reverse alphabetical here, Adam?
To make the point, I think going with Windows first is going to make it easier to make the initial points about the opportunities
Sounds
in here. So, so when you select your platform, then you get to select your profile type that then will have the settings of the policies that you're going to then create. So let's talk about templates first.
Yes.
Or I guess, actually, let's take a different step back here. On the back end, what is occurring is this is creating JSON blobs that are getting stored. They get then pushed down to the workstation when they sync in with the Intune management extension or the Intune agent, or depending on which platform you're on, there's a different, but ultimately the device, the MDM management engine is for Intune on those devices is syncing. Policies come down in a payload and they get written to whatever the register. So I'm very familiar with the Windows platform. I don't know the right terminology for all the other places. So let's call it, make the translation in your brain. So wherever the Apple stores things, that's equivalent to the registry on a Windows device. That's where those things get written.
Into the properties list.
Okay. So the P list, and then you
property list is the equivalent of the registry. So what we're actually doing, and this is where it gets really interesting on the Windows side especially, is when we're going in and creating these templates, it's going in and saying, well, these are, say, for example, if we select templates, it's now going to go and we have the option to do device restrictions as an example. And when we select that, it's weird. You have to select the text, not the box next to it. You're going to give this a quick name, but you'll see a list of all of these settings. And this is typically what you see in the settings application itself in Windows. There's some that go beyond that. But underneath all of these settings, these toggles and everything associated are the CSP policies. So when we talk about CSPs in Windows and when we talk about CSPs in Intune, they are actually the translator point to put them into the correct registry locations on the client devices. So while what Adam's going to show you here is when we go and see any of these policies, which I don't think they will appear when you click them, expand them out.
They won't do it when you do it this way. So just as so very quickly to kind of illustrate what we're trying to get here. So if I just randomly configure some items and I hit next and hit create, what we're going to see here, hopefully in this window, if I get it sized right, and I hit create, I'm going to now see the payload of what's getting written to Microsoft Graph, which is the engine that Intune is running on. And this is the payload of the object that got written with the settings that I've now configured. And so you can see all of the things that are all the properties and options that were available in the for me to choose from within my template are now have a setting value configured of not configured or whatever. So then we put password required to true, and so we've got that one set and everything. So if we do the view source, This is actually the raw view of it. So it's just a JSON blob that's being stored into the cloud as the definition for what's happening. So that's really what's on the back end. And so then when the client checks in, this gets formatted in a way that merged together with all of the other configuration profiles, policies, settings, everything gets merged together in a blob that gets sent down to the client and applied into whatever the P list or the registry or whatever Android has on it,
CSP.
the CSP, and that's used to govern the device. So to draw the correlation back to like group policy, this is equivalent to when you go into the you configure a group policy and you hit GP update force, and you can go look in the registry and you can go HK local machine software, Microsoft policies, and all of the stuff is under there. Very similarly, you can see Intune apply those things, and we'll drill into that at another point. But that's what's occurring on the workstation as a result of what we configure here. So, and so the merge of the properties and things is an important thing to note, because at some point you will run into conflicts on your profiles.
You will definitely run into conflicts.
So if I go and configure two different policies that have opposing settings, some of those settings will self-resolve and one will win over the other. But in some cases, they are in a conflict state where the engine doesn't make a decision for you, and it just says, I'm out.
It's called a race condition as well.
There you go.
So there's basically three scenarios that you end up with. It auto remediates, or each of the engines sit there and try and apply the same thing but differently, or they just flat out conflict.
Yes.
So the big difference with Intune and its configuration profiles today is that it doesn't have the ability to have hierarchical policies like we do with group policy. So with group policy, you could sit there and go, well, this one takes precedence over this one, over this one.
So you could stack policies with competing settings in them, and the top policy would always win. That doesn't happen here. It just does a merge. They do their best guess at what needs to win, and they merge them. I'm doing a really poor job. Matt and Dano, I've heard you guys talk about this before. I'm not. You've described it way better than that. But hey,
yes.
So
part of why that's a good thing, and I know a lot of people out there go, well, I don't know what policies are applied. I don't need to think about it with group policy. I just know the one at the top's winning. In the Intune world, what it gives you is the ability to sit there and be very clear about what's applying and what's not applying to that device. Whereas I know from experience, the only way you could sit there and get what's applying to my device is you had to do a resultant of policy on device, or you had to do the, what's the group policy? It's not resultant of policy. It's the modeling, group policy modeling.
Yeah, but equivalent. Yeah, it's the same thing. It's doing both of them are doing
and that's an extra level of processing and thought process that needs to be taken into that process. Whereas with this, so long as you're sitting there and you're looking at your policies, you know what are in there, you can go and resolve it. And if you do have conflicts, it's pretty straightforward. Easiest option is you remove the setting from the policy that's conflicting and you create a separate policy. So this leads us to settings catalog and why that's
hold on. Wait, sorry. We need to go back to the templates. Hold on. Sorry. I don't feel like we I was
going to circle back, but yes, all right. Let's go here first.
All right, let's finish out on the. Okay, so templates. So we've been asked, hey, how do I know when to use settings catalog? How do I know when to use templates? So the way I view it is some things are only available in template form.
Correct. And this is typically because they're complex policies.
Yes. And the main way to kind of think about this is that if I want to go and configure a SCEP certificate policy, everything in this profile is aware of the other settings. So you see all these starred items they're required values. So I can't proceed with saving this policy unless I've filled out all of these fields. When you use settings catalog, and we'll get into it, settings catalog doesn't have this relationship between the items. It may have a relationship between like, I set this to a thing and it creates a child node of another thing. But generally, you're not going to have a group of things that are related together in the settings catalog. So these templates are really that, where it's a bundle of settings all in one place for a specific purpose.
Yep.
It doesn't mean that you
together.
Do I say that again?
That are critical to be together.
Yes, correct.
So
some of them though are specifically like, so device restrictions is a great example. This is not the only place to set these settings. So device restrictions are kind of one of those ones where it's a bundle of related settings that are common together, but they don't have to go together. And you can choose to configure and not configure things. So you could very easily use settings catalog to set device restrictions settings and be much more granular. And like, I could create a turn this one on and turn this one off in 2 separate policies for individual items. And I don't have to use the device restrictions policy each time and like have all of those extra settings. Because you saw the output where that template is going to set something on all of those things. So settings catalog lets you say, I only want to set this one.
And the other thing to note on this as well, and this is really super important, is if you're using templates, especially things like device restrictions, endpoint protection, and things like that, so if we go and select device restriction as an example here, Adam, we're just going to put our test again. If you go, for example, and you set under general, block screen capture, or block any of these settings, right? So they're mobile only. This is still based and targeted towards Windows Mobile. But if you set that and then you want to go and just revert that back to not configured, that's not going to revert back.
Yeah, this is not a tri-state policy.
That's right.
So tri-state being configured, not configured, or enabled, disabled, not configured really would be kind of the way to think about it.
That's correct.
3 states of the policy.
Yeah. So if you change this back to not configured, it will actually stay in that blocked state, or it'll go to enabled. So
the policy itself would change, but what gets written to the workstation will not, is what you mean.
That's right.
So you have to. So there's a word for it. Sticky. Is it sticky policies?
Yes.
So once you set a thing, some of these policies, especially the security related ones, once you set them, you have to revert them by setting them to the opposite of what you set. Changing them to not configured does not unset them in some cases.
Yes.
It's not the case with everything, but the way to think about it, the way I've heard it described is, so if you've set antivirus security policies and your device somehow loses its Intune client, or it gets corrupt in some way and it's no longer able to apply policies, and those policies stop coming down from the cloud, or it somehow gets moved into a different group and accidentally gets those policies removed, then the device could end up in a very unsecure state accidentally. And so the idea is we want to ensure that the most secure thing that you last set is what stays on that box until we explicitly say, I want the opposite of that thing configured.
Exactly. It's just important to know that, and that's a decision-making point when looking at, do I use templates compared to settings catalog for these settings?
And I would say that 90% of our settings are in settings catalog these days for the stuff that I manage on Windows. Though I absolutely do use, if I go down the templates list, I'll tell you I've got the edition upgrade one set for a thing. I've got the all the PKCS, SCEP, the root certificate, wherever that one's
trusted
certificate. Yeah. I've got that one set, Wi-Fi and wired network. I've got all of those configured. So you definitely there's definitely things here to use. I'm not saying use one or the other. So once again, it's use case based.
Exactly. And I think the rule of thumb should be today, if you're going and creating new policies, go and use them in settings catalog first. And if you can't find them, have a look to see if they exist in the templates.
Right. So I'll point out one more thing here. Just so you'll notice in here, there's administrative templates, and then there's a imported administrative templates. We'll get into this one in a minute.
Yep.
But then in settings catalog, there's also administrative templates. You can't see it, but when we get there, you'll see it. So this is the oldest flavor of administrative templates. I don't know if there's I don't know that there's anything left in this one that's not available in the settings catalog version of administrative templates.
They're all in settings catalog.
And so that would be the one I would say, hey, shy away from this.
Definitely.
Another one that we are not going to get into yet because this one's its own kind of thing, but custom allows you to basically manually create what you've just seen us create in the templates and what you're going to see with the settings catalog. CSPs, the OMA URIs, this is the core basis for MDM, mobile device management, or like Steve likes to call it, mobile space data management.
That's right.
This is the Open Mobile Alliance defined format for how things get configured. And there's a format you have to go through, and it's very powerful because you can individually create and build all sorts of custom stuff here. And it's still a very, especially for new settings. Steve's got a better idea. I don't want to steal this for you, but we will create one of these in a minute. We'll come back to this. So let's just do that. We'll come back to this one. But just know that that's where that's at as well. Okay, so okay. It always takes so long to get through a thing that seems like this is going to be quick, and it never is. There's a lot of detail. So settings catalog.
I knew this one was going to take a bit, Adam.
I know, Steve. You always know, and I always underestimate. It's the story of my life. So go into settings catalog. At least we're not rambling. We're actually, we're on topic.
Exactly.
Okay. So settings catalog.
Yep. So we're in the settings catalog, and what we can do here is you'll see that this will match up with a lot of what you've seen traditionally in group policy. And the nice part about it is that search option at the top, so you can go and search for scenarios. The interesting thing is, if you scroll up slightly there for me, Adam, well, a little bit further back up now, there, just down touch. A little bit further, a little bit more. Right there. So we have Google and FS Logic in there. Yes, we own FS Logics now. But this is where it's imported the ADMX policies for Google Chrome. What that allows you to do is you then don't need to go and import that yourself.
And we're going to do a whole thing on the import bit, maybe in this video,
and we'll
maybe
explain
the next one, but
why we need to actually import some of the Google stuff.
Yeah. So, so Microsoft's basically, hey, we've got, we know you're going to need these for a lot of things, so we're going to import some of those extras. So
exactly,
the thing to note here is
in there, which is awesome,
is if you were to open up your ADMX, your group policies, and you were to look at all this, these would all be in the main administrative templates. But what they've done is they've kind of so you've got things called ADMX back templates, which are the traditional group policy ADMX templates. So if you're going to add if you need to add Edge into your group policies, or if you add, really, I guess Chrome's probably a better idea. If you were going to add Google to your group policies, you would import the Google ADMX templates into your
Master Central
policies
on your domain controller.
Yeah, on the domain controller. Thank you. I know how to do it. I don't know what's the words. And it would become part of your group policies, and you could manage them there. So that would become the equivalent to what an ADMX back template is, versus many of these settings are native MDM or OMA URI settings. And so they're built into the MDM engine of Windows versus being an add-on, which is the way I'm viewing it. I'm probably describing it very poorly, but you've got your MDM that has all these predefined standard settings and configurations in using the OMA URI standard. And then you've got ADMX things that are all the rest of the settings that Windows has, and they've added those on top of the base MDM stuff out of the box. Is that close, Steve?
Yeah, pretty much. And the easiest way to see this is in the documentation. We actually have all of this documented.
Yes. There you go.
Access. So one thing to note as well, while we're just going through and bringing up the CSP documentation, so
could have clicked it from any of the nodes in the settings catalog even.
Sort of. So what we have here is we're using assigned access CSP. So this is what is used for kiosk, but we're sitting here and we're calling it the configuration service provider. So this is explaining how that CSP applies to the device. And just to be clear, CSP is a Windows protocol. It doesn't represent across into the other platforms. They are using their own. But in here, what you'll see is under policy, any of these ADMX means that they're ADMX policies that have been ingested into that CSP pipeline to apply exactly the same way.
There you go.
So this is where that docs is really powerful. It gives us that all of that information around the CSPs, how they look, what they should actually look like. So we could go to here to our policy CSP for the desktop. We can see all of the information around how that works. We have that it's targeting the user. So this first verb is really important, whether it's going to be processing as the user object or as the device object. And then from there, we step all the way through of, all right, well, our vendor, in this scenario, our vendor is Microsoft. It's a policy and we're configuring this ADMX policy. So that's what sits underneath all of those policies, whether they are...
Hold on. Before you navigate off of that, hold on, go back. So that table right there, the ADMX mapping, yes. This shows you the equivalent registry key, the name that it would have been called if you were opened up group policy on your domain and search for it. So it's
location.
This is amazing. It's great because it shows you where it came from, where it goes, so you can do the direct translation if you're doing that. And then also the other thing is while you're here, that URL that you're showing there, that's your OMA URI. That's the basis for the custom CSP stuff that we mentioned a minute ago. So,
and that we'll talk about shortly.
You would use these docs to get you to there as well.
Yep.
There you go.
So what I'm going to quickly do here, Adam, is I'm just going to go and create my own policy just to show an example, because it's based on one of the conversations we had or one of the questions we had this week in the chat, which is around Windows lapse. So if we go here, Windows 10, we're going to settings catalog, we're going to create that. And in here, we're just going to put in our magical word of test, which they've changed you can actually have 2 characters there now. It doesn't have to be 4 anymore, which is nice. And then in here, we have the ability to use lapse. And you can go and specify where you're going to save the password, I believe, from memory. No, you can't. I thought we could. But we're going to go and enable that, and we can go and configure where it sits. I thought we had this, but this policy definitely applies to Active Directory, and I'll put it into the Active Directory domain for the password management, is my understanding. To answer the question that was out there this week. But in here, you have the ability to put controls around, like control, delete, things like that. One of the important things that you can do here as well is search, because there is thousands upon thousands upon thousands of policy settings in here. So what we're going to do is we're going to search for updates as an example, and we can go and see all of the update processes that exist. So we can go and have a look and put out and define how we do our security intelligent updates. We can go and specify how often we do group policy refreshes. That's interesting because we don't have group policy anymore technically, but if you're in a hybrid scenario, you can flip this and manage all of your policies from Intune, start one by one migrating your group policies across. So once you get to the end of it, you can then sit there and go, well, I have the same configurations in Intune that I have in Intune and in had on-prem in Active Directory, but I've flipped my master to Intune over group policy.
So I think that's actually a great segue into the group policy side of things.
Yep.
So one of the questions is always, so hopefully we're covering enough to where you get the idea. There's a bunch of settings in several places. Go dig and look. Start with settings catalog unless it's in one of the template items. I find it very helpful to have, especially if you've already built stuff out in your group policies, to go and do this side by side with what you've got and kind of search for the text there. There's a website called ADMX Help that has a ton of the stuff where it shows you the registry where things are going to get stored and everything. It's just really, it's awesome. But anyway, so the point here is that there is another node down a little bit further down called Group Policy Analytics.
This is super important.
And as I'm going here, I'm realizing we haven't. So this is very Windows centric. We'll come back and show you some of the other platforms, but just know that it's the same thing, just different words on it. It's okay. Same thing. You go and there's templates for Android. There's templates for Apple, all that kind of stuff. So it's conceptually the same stuff. Okay. So for Group Policy Analytics, it's a tool designed to let you import your existing group policies into Intune and do a merge into Intune and say, hey, I'm done. I've migrated all my stuff. Now, we will absolutely tell you, don't just do that. You've got
I'm going to put a qualifier on there, Adam. If you, hand on heart, honest to God, know, and are confident that your group policy is accurate, that works exactly how it is, and you've had full change control associated with it,
and you've reviewed it in the last year for accuracy and cleared out old stuff, great.
Go for it. Definitely use it.
Yes.
But if you don't align to that, take the time to clean it up.
Especially if you have things where you've got policies that overlap a lot, like, that's where you're definitely going to get into trouble. If you import so if you've got your security baselines and then you've got a Delta policy and you import both of those and say, hey, we're good. No, it doesn't work that way. You're going to have trouble.
The other thing that I will throw in there is also review the security standards that you're applying to, because security standards are constantly changing. And with that, you need to realize that sometimes those settings get removed because there's better controls in place.
Also, if you're going Azure AD only versus domain joined, some of those policies don't need to apply anymore with Azure AD only. Right. So things are different. So anyway, point being, do not just use this as a way to bulk just import everything and say, check the box, I'm done. It's a tool. It's not. It's not the It's not a big hammer. Use it wisely.
Exactly.
Okay. So what I've done is I've downloaded, so you have to export. There's a process. You have to go in and export your policies. So it tells you how to do that. So you're going to go get the GP report.xml and you're going to import that. So what I've done is I've downloaded the latest security baseline, and this is what I do in my production environment. Except they're not there. They are in these guys individually, I think. Are they? Yeah, there we go. So all my GP report.xml is here. So watch GP report XML, and then we can actually grab them all, show all 8. Okay. So I use this to create my security baseline, my base security baseline to policy to start from. I use this as a gold template that I don't touch. Once I've imported it and created it and use it, I then copy it and use it for to build my Delta. It's the template plus Delta combined policy, because you can't layer them, so it's complicated. But basically, I take this policy and then I tweak the things I don't like in it to make it into the final policy that I want. But I leave this one laying around so that I have it as a reference of this is what I had this is what I built from, so I could compare.
I don't think it liked important all 5 of them at the same time.
Oh, it's doing them.
Oh, no, it's still
they're
going.
coming. They're coming. I have done it before. I know it can. Just taking a minute. But while that's happening, we're going to drill into this one. So so you can view.
85% supported. Okay, what's not?
So you can
supported?
see. Okay, so let's see which thing. Let's see. This one's not supported, so we can't do this Windows Drive encryption. Disable new DMA when the computer's locked. Okay, so it can't do that one. Great. But it can do all the rest. Great. So I'll make a note of that one. And this doesn't go away. It stays there. You can come back and reference this. You can see what you've got. So we're going to select all the settings on this page, and I'm going to hit next.
Note that you couldn't select the one that's not possible.
Right. Yep. And then I'm going to hit next. And then this is going to be security baseline, BitLocker 23H2. Right. And what did I do? Did I do it wrong? Okay, I'm not going to actually assign this to anything, and I'm going to deploy. Deploy just means send it up into my configuration node here. And so now I have my baseline, and you know, sorry, slow down. Dang it. Oh, shoot, because of the import experience, I didn't navigate back properly. Sorry. I'm getting excited. Anyway.
Yes, you are.
Policy type, settings catalog.
Catalog.
So that's awesome, because in the early days, this wasn't the case. It didn't use that. And there was a lot of stuff it couldn't migrate. So I had to do all this stuff by hand. Now you guys all get to have the cool stuff.
So this is where Adam's showing his age, and he's going to sit there and go, well, back in my old days.
This was 5 years ago when we started this, Steve. You were right along with me, brother.
I know.
Okay, so check this out. So now we've got our baseline, which then if we were to go into our GPO and find the GPO report for BitLocker and open that, could expand administrative templates, and we could compare the settings that are here from group policy with the settings that got set here. And so you should be able to map those over and say, all right, cool, I've met that requirement. And then even here in your security baselines, they come with the documentation. So there's an Excel report, which then lets you can then compare. I don't have Excel on here, so I'm not going to open it, but you can compare the settings from the Excel report with what's here, and then use this as your note to make your notes as you're going to go through doing your deltas on these policies and all that stuff. So that's how I've done it. I like it better than the built-in baselines within Intune, because the policy conflict stuff is where this really shines. Being able to individually come in here and say, I don't want this one, and I'm going to remove that, and I can explicitly remove it from one set of devices from one policy, versus the baseline is like everybody gets this, and you can't. It's really hard to do deltas and
the challenge with the security baseline is version control as well.
Yes, there's a lot of challenges there. I don't want to go down that path too much.
And that's it, right? We're not going to sit here and go deep into the security baselines.
Yep.
But we are saying, look, there are some considerations you need to take when using that.
And so once you got this created, you can now actually duplicate this. So now I can call this my security baseline, prod or something, like a
23H2.
There it is. I knew that's what you're laughing at me for, huh? Okay. So this is the 203H2. We're not going to be around for that part. So then, this would be my template. I would never touch that one. Then I would do this one as where I'd go and actually make my changes, remove the things I don't like, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So point being, you could do that with any of your group policies that you've got configured in your environment. It really still just chugging along. I know it's imported them all before, but whatever, doesn't matter. You got the idea.
What's the unknown settings option there? If you click on that,
nothing.
We don't have any. But that's where if you've gone and imported your own ADMX, I believe, you'll come up with unknown settings. Yeah,
because it would be like, hey, you got something configured that we don't know about. All right, so Steve, I'm gonna.
That's where.
Go ahead.
Well, that's what I was going to add in there just slightly. Is that's where if you've imported your ADMX, more than likely it'll pick it up as well.
Yes.
We haven't tested that, but it should pick it up because it's in that library.
Well, speaking of importing ADMXs, you want to go that route for a minute?
All right. Let me just give me 30 seconds, and I will get my computer up because
this computer's
thing over here.
Patching.
Yes, updates are important.
I did my updates before we started, Steve. What are you doing, man? Jeez.
My computer wasn't running fine.
Mm.
We all know this. So what I've downloaded here is the Google Update ADMX. And you'll see here there's two options here.
A note on this. So you stopped earlier on the Google node in the settings catalog.
Yes.
What you may not have noticed there is that you can do Google Chrome settings. You can do Google settings, but the Google Update settings don't either they don't exist or not all of them exist. And so we wanted to configure our Google Chrome settings to be like our Edge settings, and those don't exist in what's available here. So you can search for Google. Yeah. So you can do Google Chrome, but there should be a Google Chrome update node. So just like if you, go undo your search, please. And look at Edge. Scroll to Edge. Because you'll have Edge and Edge Update. Microsoft
Edge.
So you see how you have Microsoft Edge Update. You should have a Google Update or Google Chrome Update. And you don't have it, so we need to import it. That's why we're doing this. Okay.
Exactly. So we're going to go over here. We're going to import. And we're going to import here. What this does is it's quite simple. Is we're just going to go and select our ADMX. It's in our downloads folder under Google ADMX and Google Update. Obviously, we could import the Google ADMX file, but we don't need to.
It actually will probably fail because it's already there.
Correct.
I think.
That's an interesting one. There's an upload from mobile.
That's been showing up everywhere. I haven't tried it yet.
I haven't tried it either. So we're going to hit open on that. And that's great.
You got your language file too.
What happens if I'm not in English? Well, if you're not in English, you can actually, if there's the additional language packs there for the ADML files, you can use that. So this is then how it renders it in the UX. So you could have multiple languages here, which is cool. I think it's really inclusive.
Yep.
So we've gone and created it. It's going through the upload process. It's just taking a second. Shouldn't take too long. And update failed.
And I know why. There you go. So if you were to go and open your ADMX, you would find that there's a reference in this file for the Google ADMX. And we didn't import that. And it's a dependency for this to work. There is
what you're saying is we need to import this namespace.
Yep. And you'll see it says the Microsoft policies.windows as well. And in the past, we've had to also import the Windows policies 1.2. And then there was a max of only 10 custom policies. And you'd end up having all these dependent policies that you didn't really want to have to import that took up some of your slots. And so you get limited. So they've made some improvements. I think you can do 20 now, I believe was the latest. I think that's right.
We go Google.
So once you upload the Google one, as long as it doesn't have any dependencies, then you'll be able to retry on your Google Update one, and it should then fix it. I kind of set you up for this, Steve.
I'm good with that. It wouldn't be a demo if it wasn't successful. Well, if it didn't fail, I should say. And I'm guessing I need to delete and start again for the update.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Not a problem. So we're going to delete that. Yep. Then we're going to go import. We're going to select our ADMX file for Google Update again. Make sure you go to the folder that it's in.
When they initially rolled this out, it was all PowerShell only, and it was rough.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it was hard.
Repeatable.
Because you get these failures, and then you'd have to let me try it again a different way, and let me delete.
Oh, it failed.
There you go.
Yes, it still does need
still wants the Windows
policy.
Doggone it.
So where do we get that from?
Well, so instead of trying to deal with that anymore, but you can go into the local policy store on the workstation and pull that one. I thought they had gotten rid of that requirement.
So if we go here, and what you're saying is I need to go to C, Windows.
System 32. policy store. Something. There it is. Policy definitions. Sorry, not system 32. And then the Windows.
And then there's Windows.
Dot. Is it Windows.policies? Is there a Windows.policies or just the base Windows? I cannot remember.
It could be just
that might just be the base Windows one. Try that.
And watch it go. But I've already got that.
It might.
And then we're just going to go here and we're going to select Windows.
I've done this several times and it's a different experience each time. And so I really don't actually know what we're going to find.
It's always good practice to make sure you have the right language packs there, especially if you're going to be using this across in a global tenant. So this is just going to go through. I'm guessing it doesn't like us right now.
Do too many things. Well, the Windows one is big. It's got a lot of stuff in it.
Yeah.
So while that's going, go drill into
the
configuration and go show at least the Google one that exists now.
So we go here, we go to templates.
Right.
And what we're looking for here is we're
imported.
Looking for the imported administrative templates. We go create. We're going to call this, well, it's still full. So you have to put either test or demo there as a minimum.
And what will occur is all of the imported ADMXs will be merged into this one view when you visit this location, when you do the imported ADMXs. We must have really thrown it for a loop here because it's still trying to import the other one.
Still processing.
Okay.
So what you should see here is, because we have something that we've prepared earlier on this, well, not technically prepared earlier, but it looks exactly the same.
No, don't do that. We don't want to do that.
Okay, we won't do that.
Don't do that. Go back and see if it's done. Maybe it's done. Or I can refresh on my side. It's done.
It's still going. All right. While that's going through, let's quickly talk about custom CSP policies.
Or do you want to talk about other platforms? Ooh, the Windows one is ready.
Okay.
But the other one's still removing. Okay. Do whatever you want. Carry on. Wheels are one of the wheels is now rolling past us.
Yes. Let's go here. We're going to go to templates and we're going to go imported administrative templates. Since we've got it there to a point, we're going to call this demo because we want to use a different word than test. And then what should occur here is we should start setting policies appear in here.
All right. The other one removes finally.
So this it's just, I think it's still processing on the back end.
Yeah.
And because we imported the Windows one to make it so we can import the Google one, that's why we're in this situation. It's not a major thing, and realistically, it's going to look much the same as what the administrative templates UX looks like. So
yeah,
it's not something that I think we're super, super concerned about. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bounce back and I'm going to go over here and we're going to talk about the very, very quickly, because I think we're going to have to focus just on Windows for this session. Adam?
Come on. We can power through it. We can do it.
We can try. So we're going to go here and we're just going to quickly talk about the custom CSPs. So if we go here, we're just going to call this, as an example, we're going to call this kiosk. We're going to go back over here and we're going to hit our back button and we're going to grab the assigned access CSP. I'm using this because I know how it all works and all of the technology associated with it. So we're just going to go here and we're just going to go and grab our configuration option and we're going to paste that in there. Then the next part is, what do we put in the field? What do we put in the text?
Ooh, I got a great one, Steve. Except they've moved it to settings catalog now. But how to disable Windows Copilot? That was a hot one when, it came out a
Yes.
month ago, 2
Agreed.
months ago, whenever.
Yeah. Actually, I'm going to change this to the kiosk mode app. So kiosk mode app is saying I want to run this application rather than a full XML. What we're going to select here is we're going to select string. So realistically, what you should be using is string XML, because then it makes sure it's in the right formatting and everything associated. But in this scenario, we're just going to use string because we're not doing full validation. And we're just going to grab this example. In this example, we're saying that we are going to run calculator for domain user in the kiosk profile. And that's going to go and set that policy. But the thing to note, and this is why custom CSPs, they're awesome, but there's also a lot more risk associated with them, because this is all basically copy and paste or manually written in there. There is very little validation in this UX. So even if I provide an incorrectly formatted JSON or XML file, it allows me to do that. It doesn't care.
I find every time I do it, it is definitely a fair amount of trial and error. You just kind of, and because the policy docs are generally automated, they're built from code, and they've got an engine that's defining things. It's somewhat complicated to get a good example of the right format for some of the things. So I end up kind of starting here at the docs, and then I will Google and see if Google Bing to see if there are people that have written blogs or things about it. Because, like, correct me if I'm wrong here, but what you're seeing here, this whole XML, that's not actually what I want to copy. Except when I'm in the policy and it says here's your XML, right? There's a box that I'm supposed to put my XML code in, and well, that says XML on it, and so that sure looks like the thing I'm supposed to paste, and it's not. But
because we know that it's not the right one because it says syncml.
We know, but I'm saying for our audience, this is not obvious that that's not what they're asking for.
Correct.
This is not the block of code that you are supposed to put there, and so I frequently find myself saying, I'm not entirely sure what I'm supposed to put in this box.
Correct.
So that's all. That's
and note this section here is what is actually presented to the device. When you send it down from Intune or from an MDM platform, this is the XML that's presented to the device. We're processing this under the hood and sending it down.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool, right? So everything that you're doing in the UX ends up looking like this. The reason why the custom XML exists is so you can go down to that level of control, but also it's there for insider builds and features that haven't had a UX added to it yet, where things are being changed or being updated. So it's a fully supported scenario. It's not a workaround. It's just there because we need to have the ability to do custom as that first step, as that trial and error scenario.
So CSPs are powerful. There are cases where you're going to need them. There are sometimes settings that are only available in CSP mode. Another great example of where that's been a case is there is the enterprise new feature management. Oh, I'm getting their name wrong. There are a set of configurations and policies that allow you to opt in or opt out of monthly UI feature improvements in Windows. And I don't know why my brain won't let me get the right words for that. But there's a page that has all the stuff. Here's how you can control all these things. And
so this is where
you use CSPs for some of those settings is what I was sorry, it took me a minute to get that out. Okay.
That's correct. So it's the enhanced feature updates, I think it's called. EFUs, maybe. I can't remember off the top of my head either. I should know, as it's the team I'm in that creates them. But basically, this is where we're adding features each quality update, but they're enabled. They're installed by installed off, and what we're doing is then we're sitting there and enabling it. So it's the
Windows Enterprise Feature Control. And so inside Enterprise Feature Control, you will click through and it'll tell you how you can manage the thing. And it'll say, and many, many times, so like it says, you can do it in group policy, or here's the CSP to do it. Rarely does it say, here's the settings catalog to do it. So if you scroll down a little bit.
Correct.
And there's the CSP. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so that's but yeah, that's my point is that, yeah, so like if I need to configure this and I'm using Intune and not group policy, I need to know how to do a CSP. So
yep,
there you go.
And the reason and rationale for that is this is actually in the Windows docs. So the Enterprise Feature Control will, and anything in the Windows docs will typically be referencing the CSP, because it's for all MDM platforms, not just for Intune.
Yeah.
And that's the control plane that Windows looks at. Same as with group policy, that's the control plane that we look at. And other vendors can actually use that functionality if they need to. So it just comes down to that component. And this is where we have things like, okay, we want to turn on touch optimized taskbar for 2-in-1 devices. That functionality was added in February 2023, but then that control was turned on by default with 23H2 as a feature update.
Yeah, so if you apply 23H2, you can't opt out of that feature anymore. Essentially,
correct.
All right, so we're going down a whole different rabbit hole. But anyway, that's a use case for doing the CSPs. On the back end, I've imported the Google Update ADMX successfully, and it works now. So what was happening is that the Google one that we were importing was just the base Google one that was required for the Google Update one. It wasn't the full Google one. That's why it wasn't loading in the imported node, because there was nothing to import. So scroll down.
Create. Put our magical 4 characters in. And now we have a Google option here. And we can go in and we have Google Update. As you can see, it's not as intuitive as you would think, because you can't control it on the left-hand side. You have to click through.
Oh, but you can also just click all settings and it shows everything all up instead of in the folder structure as well. So it's nice. Yep. So anyway, that's, it's a supplemental thing that's nice, because without this, you can't manage your Google Chrome settings through Intune, and you would have to do them through the Google Enterprise Management platform, which you may not be connected to or may not want to use.
Or you might not have a license for, because you need a single license in that environment.
There you go. Okay, so I think we've touched on all the major pieces of settings and profiles. So let's jump. So as I mentioned earlier, most of them we haven't drilled into the. I know that's what I was going to say. Yes. So inside endpoint security, there's a whole pile of other settings here. Most of them at this point if they have not been moved to, they are being transitioned into settings catalog backed templates. So it's a template that's not a CSP template. It's a setting. Sorry, that's not true. That's not the right words. There's an old. So what's the thing? V2 DCV1. There you go.
Device configuration V1. Device configuration V2.
Thank you.
So settings catalog is built on the DCV2 technology, whereas the templates, for the most part, are still using DCV1.
Thank you. That's such a. I knew there's a better way to say that. There you go. So,
you're welcome.
If you've already built policies out on the older DCV1, because that's always publicly written out there, like you're setting a DCV1 thing. That's why we all know what that's called. If you already had stuff built on that, at some point in the near future, those will be automatically getting migrated on the back end to be DCV2. So you don't have to do anything with them. But if you go and were to create a new policy today, like we were just looking at firewall rules earlier, you would find that they're using, but don't do those right now.
What I would say is Adam's making that claim that they're going to be automatically converted.
I'm not making that claim. I've been told that on several occasions at this point.
Okay.
It's official.
Exactly. So what we've got here, and this is where it gets really interesting, is we have this platform here. And I know you know what it means, Adam, but if we talk around platform in the Intune portal, that typically means the OS that we're targeting, right?
In this case, it's not, though.
Correct. So obviously we can see here we've got multiple different options, but we don't have anything around mobile devices because we don't have any settings for those, which is cool. But if we select this one, the Windows 10 Server and 11 Config Manager, because I'm a glutton for punishment and I still have my on-prem environment, and we're going to set security experience because we can. And we hit create. And we're going to do sec experience.
See, I don't know why we're going down this one. Of all the things, why are we doing this one, Steve? This is terrible.
Because I'm not actually worrying about the settings that it's going to
Our audience doesn't want this. Our audience wants to know, how do I go set a Mac policy?
We'll get there. We will get there if this ever loads.
Yeah. Well, good. I think the Intune has already told us we shouldn't do it either.
Yeah. But what I was going to show you is this will show up as MDM, Sense, and Sense is the Defender engine, and that's where we're sitting there on the platform, and we're saying we're using the Defender pipe to deploy it out, or
so if you use the other one, not the config manager one, you'll get MDM MS Sense. MS Sense is so what that means is that some of this will go down. If you have an MDM, if you're being managed by Intune, you're going to get the policy via the Intune engine. But if you only have your devices, so if your servers are using Defender and they're registered, then they'll get the policies through the Defender agent, because you can't manage servers with Intune. So it's a combo of these settings will go down the device through one of those channels. The config manager one is going to have a different type, because it's going to go down. It's going to actually push those policies into config manager, and then config manager is going to apply the policy.
So you'll see here MDM and Microsoft Sense.
There you go.
I was wrong. Platform doesn't do that. It's target.
I wasn't gonna, whatever you. Yeah.
I said it with confidence.
You did. I don't gain anything by telling you you're wrong, because you're gonna say no. That's so. Carry on, sir. Okay, so the point here is that the stuff here under that is all Defender related
in the security endpoint.
In the security node is designed to allow you to extend a cloud management platform for your cloud enabled devices that are not managed explicitly by Intune. So servers aren't managed by Intune, but if you Arc enable your on-prem device, or even enroll that device into Defender, then that device will begin reporting into your devices node in Intune. It looks like it's in Intune, but it'll be marked differently. You're not actually managing it with the MDM agent. You're managing it. It's visible because it's being managed by the Defender agent instead. Microsoft Sense. Yeah. So it's a little bit complicated. I mean, a little bit confusing when you're not familiar with what the differences are. But that's the deal: is that you're extending a cloud management single pane of glass option for some of these settings to let you touch your non-Intune managed servers that have Defender on them.
Exactly.
Or not server devices, period.
Yeah.
Because you could technically have just workstations that aren't Intune managed that have the Defender agent on them, and they would still be managed with this as well. This would still function for them.
If you're still running config manager on-prem without co-management, you could still see your devices in here.
Yep. So I think we'll get in more in depth on the security node further in another video
in the future.
But just know that that's another, yet another flavor of policies and configurations we can do. So Steve, drill through and show very quickly on the other platforms. As I said, we didn't want to be completely Windows centric on this, but it's Windows heavy because it's got all the examples all in one spot there. So looking at the other platforms, there are less things, but they're very similar.
Catalog and templates. Templates, this is where when we talk about custom, we've got custom here, which is, again, and I'll just do a quick demo. Slightly different. You'll see here that it's looking for a configuration profile file. And that profile file is what is typically called the plist inside the Apple ecosystem. And you can sit there and push it out, whether it's device or user. Great. The other thing to note, though, is if we go here, we go new policy, we go and select Mac OS, we go and select templates again, we also have the option to just grab a preference file as well. And it's literally sitting there and tying it to an application and importing the same file. So there's a couple of ways to do the same thing. It's there intentionally because
click on the hold on, wait, don't. Well, never mind. I was going to suggest clicking on the little eye, because I don't think we've done that on any of these yet. But if you haven't noticed it yet, but you've got the little eye button next to a lot of the things. If you see that eye button, click on it, because a lot of times it will give you the context for what it's asking for in those fields. So if you're like, oh, I'm not sure what they're asking, maybe sometimes it'll tell you. And that was super helpful. I'm glad we went all the way back through that one. But anyway, sometimes those little eyes have a great amount of information, and correct, even links
and sometimes they'll have links, which is awesome. So why we're jumping through that one really quickly is it's roughly the same as what you're seeing for Windows as well, right? So we have our templates. It's exactly the same with Mac OS, where we have our.
So do the device restrictions, since that's the one we did for Windows.
And we grab device restrictions. We go create. We go here. And we go next. And you'll see that it has much the same. It's again by state, not tri-state. So it's yes or no. Well, yes or not configured, but reverting back won't actually remove the setting. And it's exactly the same as what you would see in the Windows ecosystem on this.
So then let's look at the settings catalog for Mac. See what we've got there.
That's the interesting one. So we go here and we go Mac OS and we're selecting settings catalog. We go and create in there. And what this is using under the hood,
I like that you're typing all the words and then we're not saving any of these, but it's great.
I know. It's good practice. What you'll see here is the declarative device management. And these...
this is that next level right here.
This is like just fantastic. So sitting underneath all of this is a GitHub repo that Apple maintains that has all of these settings in a YAML format, I believe, from memory. It's either YAML or... no, it's not JSON, it's YAML. And you can just go and consume it and see all of those settings. So when they add them in, we typically will add the support into Intune really rapidly. So you can see that there's a huge amount of settings here and configurations that you can actually set around making sure the device is secure.
Okay, so I'll be honest, I know very little about the declarative device management stuff, but the way I understand it is that it is a much more rapid configuration from a client side. You can get your policies and settings much faster than you can with the traditional MDM. And I believe we're expecting to see similar functionality coming across the Windows platform at some point.
That's my understanding as well. I'm not close enough to be able to give you a definitive. But that is my understanding as well. So if we go here, we can then go in and see all of the device management client schema. And this actually shows you all of the configurations that are being created.
And so what's great is what you described is that the settings catalog is now connected to this and allows them to bring in consume the settings directly from Apple in a way that previously they would have to wait for to get it sent in and get it converted to settings catalog, and so now they've got a much more rapid way to consume this, which I think is awesome.
Definitely. So let's grab AirPlay for example. What you'll see in here is if you step through each of these, you'll see that will marry up with what we have here under AirPlay.
Correct me though. These guys, so these settings here are not coming from DDM.
I thought they were, but they
only
might not
the stuff in the DDM is in that node is the only stuff currently coming from the DDM.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah. Like that software update stuff is the newest. Like I think that when it came out, the software update stuff was the first DDM stuff in Intune for Apple, or first stuff in Intune period. And that was a big deal.
I think so, yeah. Looks like it.
But eventually, the idea would be that all of those same settings that are in here would then be converted to use DDM, which would just make it more fluid and be able to handle if you've got new settings that are coming out that are part of the latest, hey, Apple just rolled out iOS 17. Where's my settings for it? Well, they're coming because they're coming straight from Apple. As soon as they publish it to DDM, we should be able to be seeing it. I believe I'm stating all that correctly. Watch this space.
That's my understanding. Yeah, and that's the goal, is to get it to the point where it's super, super straightforward. So if we go here.
This one's an interesting one too. So this one allows you to force down the updates, but the challenge is, as far as I can tell, you have to give it a specific target OS that you want it to force. Instead, there's not an option to tell it that you want to use the latest all the time. So you always you have to then come back in here and update it the moment you are ready to do the next one, which is but this one actually forces the updates down faster, or sorry, more forcefully than the other. If you scroll down, there's another update node. If it's not in here, it's in the templates.
Yeah, so the thing to note is, so that's software update, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, automatic install macOS updates.
Sorry, we are in macOS. I was thinking of the iOS version, but it's similar.
Yes. So in here with the software update, what this is about is expediting.
Yes.
And that's why it's more forceful.
Because the other one, essentially, the user can continue. It requires the user to put the passcode in order to allow the update to apply. Essentially, the user could continue to deny the update, and you can use DDM to force the update.
Correct. So that's the big difference with macOS, right? It's actually pretty close. It's pretty darn close to what we have with Windows.
Yeah. The iOS one is going to be very, very similar in nature.
Yep.
The beauty and the challenge here of trying to cover all the platforms is that it's the same thing with different platform names largely for this stuff. So the concepts are going to be the same across the things. So us going through and saying, okay, well, here's what it looks like on Android. It looks exactly the same as all the other things. It's some settings that you can configure for the thing. The difference will be when we get into the nuance of, all right, now I need to do X thing on this platform. That's when showing the nuance on how to do that explicitly thing, where's the best place to apply it from, etc., makes sense for us to dig in further.
I think the one that I think is the coolest one in Android is the OEM config, where you can go and configure based upon your OEM's platform. It's really late for Adam, so he's not as interested.
I actually am interested still, but I've been burning the candle at both ends in the middle.
Oh, good. So then if we go configuration designer, and this is where you can force down all of your Knox information onto the device. So if it's registering into Intune first and then into Knox, this gives you the ability to ensure that configuration lands on the device. And obviously we all know Knox is for Samsung mobile devices, but it also is for their industrial devices where you go and use it in plants and things like that.
Yeah. In fact, we use at my company, we use Knox Manage for all of our manufacturing ruggedized, intrinsically safe devices and stuff, because we're all running on Samsung anyway. So let's go that route.
Exactly.
But
yeah,
eventually maybe we'll move them into Intune. But yeah,
Yeah.
you got lots of tools in the toolbox. Pick the right one for the job.
Exactly. And probably what I would say, especially for like the Mac OS, iOS, it covers pretty much everything nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
There's very little that isn't covered.
So the thing that so while you're talking about that, so on the iOS side of things, the thing that's different from specifically for iOS that is different from everything else that we've looked at is we went on the applications node, and there are settings and configurations that are there that I would say if you're going to do any sort of MAM, so sorry, we need to remember the audience may not know what that is. So mobile application management. So that's where a user, your customers own their device, or maybe not, business owns it, whatever. Their device is not managed by MDM. So you're going to either be MDM or MAM managed. You technically can be both. If you're MDM managed, you can also apply MAM policies on top of that. So
you should use MAM no matter what.
Yeah. So MAM is applying to the application layer of whatever device you're on. So for a corporate, for me on my personal phone, I can install Outlook, and I can sign in with my corporate credentials. And if I've configured a MAM policy, then when I sign in, I'm essentially saying, please apply whatever restrictions to me or auto configurations or whatever that we've got configured here to that instance of that app that's running logged in under my corporate credential. So what'll happen is I'll launch Outlook or I'll launch Edge, and it will say checking your organization's requirements. And like for us, we require a PIN to be configured on the app in order to unlock it. And so first thing it'll do is say, hey, you need to set up a PIN to unlock this app because it's a corporate requirement. If I don't set that PIN, I can't sign into Outlook on my phone. I can sign into Outlook with a personal account and it'll work just fine. But if I want to switch over and see my company email, I've got to put in that PIN, and then it will govern it with policies that can prevent cut, copy, paste, forwarding, whatever. So MAM is a whole different thing. We'll get into that on another video more in depth. But just know that that's yet another thing that's not in this main configuration profiles section.
And I think we're pretty close to where we need to start wrapping up here, Adam. We talk about the Android. They're much the same, but you'll see that there's 3 different options here. This first one, if you're still running Android Device Administrator in your environment, understand that it's actually not supported by Google anymore, and Intune will be moving away from it soon. So if we go here to enrollment as an example, and we go to Android, and we go and select, where is it, Device Administrator, you now get this message saying, hey, it's actually not necessarily supported. And you need to do stuff. So there are restrictions that you should be putting in place. What we are seeing is some customers are still needing this because they're running older devices.
I believe that we're using it for Teams phones.
Yep. Because they're running Android 9. Is the typical number.
That would be the deal, I think.
Yep. So just understand that this is starting to be phased out, and you need to be aware of that. And
yeah, there you go.
But then there's multiple different management platforms for Android, which we touched on previously, where we have the Android open source as well as the traditional personal owned, corporate owned work profiles, all of that awesomeness. And if you haven't enabled work profile for your Android devices today, you're doing it wrong.
You heard it here first.
Obviously, there's certain scenarios, asterisks, all of that, but work profiles best experience for your end users, because it means at the end of the day, they can turn off all of their work emails and everything associated and still use the device.
Yep.
Cool.
All right. So we have blown through all the a lot of the basics for how all the different ways you can set settings on your devices. We did not, like we said at the beginning, we certainly did not go into great detail on any given one. What we would love to hear from you is, okay, you've got a taste. What did we fly past that caught your interest that you'd like us to drill into further? We know that we will be getting in further into MAM. We'll get in further into specific policies for, so like, we'll do a BitLocker one, how to configure BitLocker and manage it, how to do laps, how to do Hello for Business. Each one of those is just doing the same thing, just with different settings each time. So talking through the nuance of the specifics of the thing. So we will get into more of those things. But hopefully what we've given you is the tools to begin that journey to say, okay, I feel comfortable knowing that there's not a right way or wrong way. There's not a right place or wrong place. Sometimes there's only one place, and that's really nice because it helps direct you. Like,
it makes it nice, easy, right place.
Some of it just is, it comes down to preference. Like, I like it better here, or my needs are different because I can do, like we said, device configuration or the device restrictions. If you don't have a case where you need to break out things granularly and, hey, I want to be able to store my password, but I don't want Steve to do his. Well, now I got to make two policies and it's hard to break it out of this big combined thing. Think through what your scenarios are going to be. Look at your current group policies if you've got them and see how are you applying, hierarchy and things. How many overlaps do you have? Get a good, map of what that stuff's going to look like so that it makes it easy for you to kind of structure what you're going to build. Some cases, you don't have a lot of choice, which is great. Some cases you do have a fair amount of choice. Like when you get to BitLocker, you can go configure BitLocker under the endpoint security node. You can configure it in settings catalog. You can configure it in a template. You could configure it in a CSP. And you can, I think, configure it maybe in configuration. I mean, compliance template or is that passwords? It's the passwords in compliance template, not BitLocker.
Yep.
Anyway, there's 3 different places you can do BitLocker.
Well, no, there's 4.
Is there 4? What's the 4th one?
Remediation script.
Well, I mean, that's just code, like throwing code down. Okay, we didn't go there. Anyway, point being, sometimes there's way too many options, and it's like, well, I didn't need all of these. Which one's the right one? But hopefully you've got the right tools to get you started, and this is gonna get the juices flowing and help people move. So, but please leave us some comments. Let us know kind of where we've got some gaps on what you're waiting on. Also, please dig through. We've got 5 years worth of this. We've done this before. It's the same story, just different UI mainly for a lot of this stuff. So if you're looking for the concepts and things, the older videos are fine. If you're trying to see like where specifically on the new UI, the docs are probably going to be faster than waiting on us to do a video, but hey, we'll get there. So thanks for coming along on the ride with us. It's good times.
Yes. Thank you, everyone.
See you, Steve.
See you, Adam.